Teff, the smallest grain that can make the biggest difference. My name is Malcolm Saunders and welcome to Easy Upgrades, brought to you by the Light Cellar. I wanted to introduce you to the smallest grain in the world. It's called Teff. This is USA grown Teff. There's an ivory Teff. There's a brown Teff. It comes in this form. Apparently, just 1 tablespoon of this grain can grow a ton of seed in just 12 weeks. Pretty impressive. Got a great nutrient profile, and one of the best things that's going to improve and revolutionize your life, as it did for mine, is it's a gluten-free grain that you can ferment to create breads, wraps, flatbreads. Probably, potentially, one of the places that you've come across Teff has been in Ethiopian restaurants. I don't know if you've ever been there and they serve the curries and all the different dishes, and it's usually on this plate of this spongy-like bread, and that's that fermented Teff bread. So I'm going to show you how to create that in your own home, and all the applications of it are quite wonderful. Very simple, very easy. We start off with the grain. We get that. We need to grind it. You can do that in a coffee grinder, a Vitamix, Magic Bullet, whatever you've got. We grind that to a flour. Okay, we've ground up the Teff into a flour. We get a container, glass or ceramic preferably. We put that in. And now we want to put in some sort of a starter, something with a culture that's going to activate this, that's going to ferment it. Number of different choices you can use. You can use whey. Now this comes from yogurt or from cheese, where basically you take your yogurt, you put it into a mesh or a strainer, and you allow all those solids to stay, and then that liquid that drains through a cheesecloth, through an old nut milk bag, whatever it is, it's that liquid at the bottom. That's called the whey, and that's full of active bacterial cultures. That's really wonderful to use. You can also, depending on the flavor, here I have some pickles made in the fall, and we've been enjoying them all winter when we've got some of that liquid left over. So I can use that as a starter. It's going to come through with little hints of the spices that were in there, but once you get this going, once you get it fermenting, I find that it's really subtle difference. We also have some kraut water, so this is again extra water, leftover water from jars of sauerkraut, and that can be used as a starter. So we're going to go ahead and use the kraut water. And, you know, per cup of your ground Teff, you really only need, there's no magic ratio. You could use all of the liquid that you're going to add could be the starter, or it could just be a portion of. So at least, 20-25% of that liquid volume total that's going to go in to this should be the starter. So that's maybe about a third, and then the rest I'm just going to add plain water. And we want to do just slightly more than equal amounts liquid to dried Teff. Once we have that, use a wood utensil, something non-metal, to stir this. This is wood with a little silicone edge to it. Basically just mixing it in, letting that Teff rehydrate. I like to scrape off the outsides of the bowl so it's nice and clean, and the Teff just sits in the liquid there. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to let that ferment from anywhere from 2 to 3, even up to 4 days. So you can cover with a cloth like I've got over here, or this container came with a lid. It sits on nice and loose, and just put that in a warm spot in your kitchen, wherever it is. So we just let that sit. And then, here's one that's been sitting for a few days. We can check it out, see if it's ready. Yeah. One of the things that you'll notice is sometimes there's little bubbles. You can see that fermentation happening. It can even rise, too. So this is definitely fermented. This is definitely ready. It's been going for a few days. Now we're ready to make our Teff wrap, our Teff bread with it. Okay, so this is essentially like your starter, your mother. If you've ever done any kind of work with sourdough cultures, we've just used the Teff grain. We had our starter culture, our water, and we can continue to feed this every day and keep it going, keep it growing, and draw from it. So I'm just going to take off as much as we're going to use today for our bread. Pour some into the bowl. And now we're going to add just a little bit more water to thin it out. And we give it a stir, just to thin that consistency. You don't want it too watery, but you also don't want it too thick. As it's fermenting for those few days, it's on the thicker side of a consistency, and then as we are ready to cook with it, we can thin it out. For sure, you can add salt, you can add spices, you can add oil, but just the plain basic recipe just has you fermenting this teff. Alright, so we've got a cast iron skillet ready to go. If it needs just kind of a touch up, a brush of some oil, so it's nicely greased. Certainly it's not cooking with the oil, just lightly greased non-stick pan like a well-seasoned cast iron works very well. Alright, so the next step, once you got your pan nice and hot, is to pour that in. And now we want to cover it. Okay, so we're going to let this cook on the one side, and one of the things I listen for, is to begin to hear that condensation from the pan begin to drop, from the pan onto the lid and then drop back onto the pan. You should hear a little ch-ch-ch, and that's an indication to me that it's beginning to be ready to flip. And once you begin to do this recipe, you'll begin to get your own sense of when that first side is cooked, you flip it over, and then quickly cook the other side, and it's all good. Just peer in. Okay, so we're not quite there yet. You can see on this side that's beginning to cook, but we still got obviously the center as well as the outside. And you can see all those bubbles. That's just from the natural action of the fermentation of the yeast. And as it cooks, it's naturally unleavened and fermented. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and give that a go and try and flip it over. Just getting around each side. And there we go. Okay, so just cook the other side through, and take about another minute or two, and we're good. It's that easy. We've just got about that other side done. Let's take a look. Yeah, looking good, looking good. That first side, for me, always usually comes out a little bit darker than the second. So we put that onto a plate. We can start our next one. And this, we can then turn into anything we want. You can make this into a pancake recipe. This can now be a flatbread, like an Indian naan or roti, or you begin to pick up your curries, your spices, or then you can create a wrap, like a sandwich. Put in some avocados, some tomatoes, some sauerkraut, some lettuce, some sprouts, whatever you like, and it's a delicious thing. It's got slightly kind of a slightly sour from the fermentation, but a really nice balance of like the sour, the nutty, beautiful grain, very delicious, gluten-free, and very nutritious.